Okay, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. We got another great trial for you. We're in redirect examination of one of the prosecution's witnesses. Let's go live to court.
All right, Mr. Williams, who would you like to call next?
Kevin Arnold.
Kevin Arnold. Mr. Arnold, if you'll raise your right hand, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may be seated. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. A couple of things. If you'll speak to the back of the room, our jury's sitting out here today. We need everybody to be able to hear your testimony. The second thing is if you hear an objection, pause your testimony. I'll make a ruling on that objection and tell you how to proceed, okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Shade Attorney.
Good morning, sir. Would you state your name for the record?
Good morning. Kevin Arnold.
And how are you employed?
I'm a captain with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with that agency?
Well, over 25 years.
All right. Suffice it to say you were working there from 2016 to 2018?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In very general terms, would you just tell the jury what the patrol division is?
Okay. The patrol division is ladies and gentlemen that are dressed in myself in a uniform capacity. And we have the initial contact with most victims or citizens that contact us for service. We get calls for service that range from welfare checks to crimes that have been committed. So we go out and make contact with them and investigate those crimes. And do a lot of other functions. We serve warrants, civil process, they go to put on safety seminars and discuss some safety factors and different for the community. So we do a range of things in uniform patrol.
Yes, sir. Now, you mentioned that patrol deputies are in uniform, correct?
That is correct.
Are they also in marked cars?
In marked vehicles, yes, sir.
All right. That reads sheriff's deputy and kind of what we all consider police cars, correct?
That's correct. Now, we may have some supervisors that may be in some unmarked units, but they have a police package type unit.
Okay. I want to ask you, do you remember the defendant, Zachary Wester, coming to work at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office?
I do.
Was he assigned to the patrol division?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'd like to ask you what kind of information is available to a patrol deputy in his or her assigned patrol car. What access to information do they have generally?
As far as like a computer automated dispatch type system, it's a laptop system that's in patrol vehicles. And what the system has is our dispatch receives calls, telephone calls from the citizens or from different people, and it's put into the computer system, and it's sent out, and the officers have access to see what the top calls that have come in that they're dispatched to. They also have access with certifications to NCIC, FDLE, which is a national database that can run criminal history, run tags, and that nature.
Okay. So if a patrol deputy has somebody's information, whether that's a license or whatever, they got it during a lawful stop, maybe they're giving somebody a ticket and they have their ID, would they, if they had that patrol car, would they have access potentially to that person's criminal history?
They could, yes.
Okay. You mentioned, I think you called it computer automated dispatch, is that correct?
Yes, CAD, that's correct.
All right, and that's what I was going to follow up with. Is that generally referred to as CAD?
Yes.
Or a CAD report?
It's considered CAD. A CAD report would probably be something you might pull out of the, IT might be able to pull out of the system itself.
Is dispatch a separate section from patrol?
It is. They're stationed at the sheriff's office.
All right. And generally, what is it that dispatch is doing as far as their interactions with patrol?
Dispatch, again, they're they can take calls for service. When citizens call, they want to report a burglary or theft or something in that nature, they'll contact dispatch. Dispatch will enter the top call that they're receiving with the information, with the victim's name, address, telephone number, and the details of the call will be put in. They work fire rescue, emergency type calls. They receive those through 911. Those are also put into a CAD system, and directed services for that type call will go out to fire rescue, could go to uniform patrol, would be first responders. So they take a lot of information that they gather and put into the system, and it can be directed back to the deputies on the road.
Okay. And if a patrol deputy is out on patrol during their shift and they have probable cause and make an arrest of somebody, they have the authority to do that, correct?
That's correct.
If they have probable cause, correct?
Probable cause.
All right. When that is done, does that same patrol deputy generally author the report documenting the incident?
That's correct.
And are those reports relied on by the sheriff's office to document that incident properly?
Right. The case they may be working, they'll do an incident report that's entered into the CAD system.
All right, just a moment, Mr. Arnold, Captain Arnold. That's all I have, Judge.
Mr. Davis?
No questions for this witness.
Mr. Williams, are you going to want Mr. Arnold to be subject to recall?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Arnold, if you'll do the court a favor, just in case you're needed to give further testimony in the case, if you'll not talk with anybody about the questions you were asked or your answers in this proceeding today, the state's requested that you could potentially be subject to recall. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, you are released for the morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who would the state like to call next?
Caleb Corbin.
Caleb Corbin.
Okay, Sarah Becker is with us, criminal defense attorney. Sarah, what are your overall thoughts about this case? I mean, really an outrageous case. I'm waiting for the facts to be proven, but I mean, this is the worst of the worst of what he's being, the allegations in the case. What do you think?
Yeah, Bob, I think that this is one of those cases that just really attacks the credibility of officers and brings down the faith of the public in an institution that they look to for protection. Unfortunately, as a criminal defense attorney, this is something that I know happens, and we've encountered it before. But to see it on this scale is really quite shocking. And again, I think it just really it hurts the public's faith in the institution that they typically have a good deal of trust in.
You know what, Sarah, what struck me is having been a chief law enforcement officer for 44 police agencies and been civil rights litigator for years before that, is that, yeah, it happens, but usually it happens where the cops have some relatively, what they call good intention. They know that is a bad actor. They're trying to build probable cause. I'm not saying it's right, but this guy is doing this gratuitously to people who have nothing to do with the criminal justice system. He's just doing it to score points, in my opinion. I don't think I've quite seen anything that obnoxious.
Yeah, no, I agree, Bob. And you're right. It's a good point to bring out that oftentimes the acts like these, when they occur, happen because the police on some level think that they know that the person did it, and they're trying to get what they believe is a just result, trying to avoid what they feel like might be, an unfair situation where somebody gets away with something because of a technicality. But what we have here, again, be it driven by a quota system, be it driven by a need to put himself in a powerful position, it is something really that appears to be without justification of any sort.
Yeah.
Not that it's ever right.
Right. We're going to show our viewers something that's pretty interesting later on about one of those incidents, but we're live in court, so let's go back to it.
That was my responsibility.
That's what I was going to ask. Body camera related. Did your duties involve some interaction with the body camera system at the sheriff's office at that time,
Yes, it did.
all right? As such, were you familiar with how they operated?
I was.
All right. I'd like to ask you specifically about the Axon body cameras. Do you recall those being used at that time?
They were.
All right. And same thing, were you familiar with how they were operated?
I was.
Just generally, could you tell the jury, you know, how they were designed to be positioned on the uniform, what they were designed to depict, that kind of thing?
So the process that we kind of determined with the body cameras is the deputy was allowed to put the body camera anywhere they wanted to put it on their chest area. We had some guys that wore it, you know, right or left side of their chest. A lot of guys wore it in the center of their chest. Body camera was positioned there. Policy was developed and stated that anytime they got out on a call that they would turn on a camera. Actually, I'm sorry, it was at officer's discretion. There were certain calls that were depicted in the policy that they needed to be turned on for. But body camera had a switch on the top of it. You turned it on to start your shift, and then to actually start the recording with the body camera, you would double tap center of the chest and it would start the recording.
Let me ask you a follow-up there. You mentioned there were some that were distinguished, that there was officer discretion. What about a patrol stop where somebody is taken out of a car, a search is conducted, and somebody is potentially arrested?
Yes, it was definitely encouraged for them to wear that and have it on then, for sure,
Okay. Partially or from beginning to end? Or?
from beginning to end.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a policy for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me ask you this. Would you describe to the jury the technical operation of the Axon body camera? So for instance, how could it even, you mentioned where it was positioned, but how could it be turned on?
So in order to turn the camera on, as I kind of touched on before, the camera had a switch on the very top of it. You just slid the switch. That would turn the camera on. That wasn't it recording. They kind of state it as a buffer state. It's recording, but it's not saving the video until the officer or the deputy double clicks the center. There's a center round button in the center of the camera. They would double click that. That would jump the video back in time, about a minute in time, and that would grab both audio and video of the recording. Now, there was a lot of, if the deputy didn't turn the camera on with the slide switch, a lot of times they would get out, turn the camera on with the slide switch, and then press the record button in the center. So with that, it got, as soon as that, body camera was turned on.
And just to be clear, how would a deputy, was there a function of the camera to notify a deputy if it was actually on?
Sure. The body camera had three abilities to be able to let someone know, the deputy or someone around the deputy. It had an audible beep, it had a vibrate, and it had an LED on the top of it. The LED would blink green when it was on and red when it was recording. The deputy did have the ability to turn that off, and that would go into, can't remember the state of it.
That'd be called a stealth mode?
Yes, sir, stealth mode. They could turn certain features of the camera off, so they could turn off the LEDs, they could turn off the vibrate, they could turn off the audible beep. And that was it was at officer's discretion, more for officer safety. Don't want a big bright light on the center of their chest, or a beep letting someone know where they're at. But most of the time, the guys kept all that on.
Now, at the end of let's say a patrol deputy shift, what were they supposed to do with that body camera?
So at the end of their shift, if it was the end of a 2-day or 3-day shift, the guys worked a 2-day or a 3-day shift. At the end of their shift, they were to dock the camera at the sheriff's department and download all of the video that was on that camera.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How would a video that was captured end up getting preserved to where it could be used at a later date? So you said it would be docketed, correct?
It would be docked at there at the sheriff's office. We had 2 docks that were mandated. That was the only place they were to download their video. And then that was stored on evidencelibrary.com's Axon's cloud server that was stored off premise.
Okay. And were the body cameras assigned to specific deputies? So for instance, if I come in after it's been docked, am I going to get the same one back, or is it just up for grabs?
No, they were assigned to specific deputies, and we had actually.
Okay, Zachary Wester trial. You see what the prosecution is doing by putting all sorts of people to explain the body camera language, including this witness. May be a little dry, but extremely important as where they're going to be going with regard to the videotape that they actually secured. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we have examination of the IT witness being asked questions about the policies of the department with respect to the preservation of the body-worn cameras. Let's go back to court.
That is correct.
And there are certain administrators that have access to that to be able to delete videos at that point, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And Mr. Wester would not have been able to delete his own videos that were uploaded, correct?
No, sir.
I believe you would have had that ability, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mike Hodges?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
I believe there was a patrol secretary, and the only reason she had that access was for redaction capabilities.
Okay. And do you know how long the videos would be stored on evidence.com?
I believe we had it set for 120 days. State statute said 90 days, so we wanted to go ahead and extend it past that.
Okay, so you guys did another 30 days past
Yes,
what
sir.
the state statute required?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But there was somebody designated who was supposed to be reviewing the videos before they were deleted to make sure they had evidentiary value?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Nothing further. Any follow-up, Mr. Williams?
Just a moment, Judge. Could a patrol deputy also determine whether or not their body camera video had been actually loaded after it had been docked?
Could they log in to evidence.com and see their video?
Right. Was there a way for a patrol deputy to view to see, well, I made an arrest the other day, and I want to see if
Yes.
it got logged properly?
So initially, before the video was downloaded on the dock, the deputy could use their phone via Bluetooth to connect to the camera. It was just a monitor, a viewing device. It was not actually editing the video in any sort of way. They could actually watch the video, and then after the body camera was docked, then they would be able to log into evidence.com and actually see that video.
Mr. Davis asked you about your capabilities with your position. Did you ever delete any videos
No, sir.
related to this case?
No, sir.
Did you ever assist Lieutenant Hodges in deleting any videos from this case that pertain to this criminal case?
No, sir.
Okay, that's all.
Mr. Davis, any follow-up? I can have just a moment. Nothing further. Okay. Do you want to keep Mr. Corbin as a potential witness from the state's perspective?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Corbin, I'm going to ask you not talk with anybody outside of this courtroom about your testimony, the questions you were asked, et cetera. Today, you're still under the umbrella of the court through the remainder of it.
All right, so there we have the police officer, IT expert for the police department. Adam Conta is with us, a criminal defense lawyer as well. Adam, I wanted something that struck me, because I know you know the police world very well, and civil rights issues. They are required by statute to keep the cameras or the footage for 90 days. That department goes to 120 days. The problem I see with that, and you tell me if I'm out of place here, is it doesn't give the defense an opportunity. They don't know what the defense is going to be in the case, and those things always have a chock full of information that could be helpful. Now, in my law practice, we get that as part of our discovery. We make sure we put that in there so it doesn't get destroyed. And the other thing is it doesn't allow the department to do a practice and pattern analysis of a particular officer. It could be they could be one incident, two incidents, three incidents, but they should also revisit globally the officer if a number of IA complaints come in. What are your thoughts about all that?
Well, I think you just laid it out pretty well. And the larger concern, especially in a case like this, that really highlights it is who knows what this guy's been doing? I mean, we're talking about a multitude of instances of wrongdoing over the course of a couple of years, really 2017, 2018. What about 2016? What about 2015? What about every arrest he's ever been a part of? Every single one of them should be evaluated carefully. And if there was body cam footage for all of those, it would go a long way. So, I think what this shows is that us as a nation, we're starting to really embrace body cam and understand it and understand its importance. But this is an example of why it needs to be even more reaching. And they need to be able to forget 90 days, forget 120 days. You should have to keep this footage for 3 years, for a period of time that really allows an investigation to take place if there needs to be one.
Right, and you mentioned 3 years. That's interesting. And I think you may be getting towards this point. Like when the statute of limitations run, both in a criminal case as well as a potential civil rights case, Sarah, because those things could be very. I know as a civil rights attorney at one point in my career, trying to get information from the police departments, even when you were in federal court, was very, very difficult. And these things give such a depiction to the jury that you can't otherwise get from a regular witness. I mean, let's face it. In this particular case, they took people who were downtrodden, socioeconomically in a disadvantaged position, some who had drug convictions, some who nobody will believe. And Sarah, I'm going to get an answer to that question because I think it's really, really important. But unfortunately, fortunately, we got more testimony in court. So let's go back live.
Special Agent with Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Was your agency, FDLE, referred this case, this criminal case we're here for today, for an independent criminal investigation?
Yes.
All right. And were you assigned as the case agent for this case?
Yes.
Now, as such, did you collect case files for the listed victims from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I did.
All right. And specifically, I'm going to ask you one by one about each one. Did you collect a case file related to Maria Turner from an arrest July 14th of 2017?
Yes.
Okay. And that case file, actually, let's keep going. Did it also include Mr. Reginald Williams?
Yes.
From an arrest of August 30th of 2017?
Yes.
Mr. Benjamin Bowling from October 2nd of 2017?
Yes.
Mr. Derek Benefield from October 16th, 2017?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Driggers from February 9th, 2018?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresa Odom, February 15th of 2018?
Yes.
Mr. Joshua Clenny from March 14th of 2018?
Yes.
Mr. Joshua Emanuel from April 8th, 2018?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Van, April 17th of 2018?
Yes.
Mr. Trevor Day from May 4th of 2018?
Yes.
Mr. James Fears from June 3rd, 2018?
Yes.
And Mrs. Kimberly Hazelwood from June 7th of 2018?
Yes.
And have you reviewed state's exhibits, composite exhibits 2 through 13 before today?
Yes.
Okay. And just for the record, there are 2 boxes here in the courtroom. Are they contained in these 2 boxes?
Yes.
Okay. Do those include the case files that you previously testified to?
Yes.
And do those case files include things like the arrest reports from those incidents?
Yes.
The offense reports?
Yes.
Any seized items that the defendant allegedly seized from those listed victims?
Yes.
The FDLE chemistry lab reports indicating what kind of drugs they may have tested for or not?
Yes.
Any potential chain of custody records for those items showing where they went and to whom?
Yes.
Do they also contain booking information or what may be called a jail detention report showing somebody was booked into jail for how long?
Yes.
Do they also include discs of body cameras which relate to those arrests made by the defendant for those victims?
Yes.
Now, not every one of these contains a body camera video, correct?
Correct.
Specifically, which ones do not?
The ones that do not contain a body camera are from Maria Turner, Reginald Williams, Benjamin Bowling, and Derek Benefield.
Judge, at this time, I would move states composite exhibits 2 through 13 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
2 through 13 will be admitted.
Judge, at this time, I would move to publish only 2A, an arrest affidavit and complaint related to Joshua Manuel. That's 2A.
Be published.
Just a moment, Ms. Chase, getting the technology connected. There it is. Are you able to see that on the screen in front of you?
Yes. Yes.
All right, if it's all right, I'll try to keep my voice up and I'll step around here where I can see it as well. All right, is this generally what we would refer to it as an arrest report?
Yes.
If you could, Agent Chase, and I'll guide you, but if you could describe the relevant portions of this arrest report related to Joshua Manuel to the jury. In other words, orient them to where relevant information is found. So for instance, how do we know who authored this arrest report? Who wrote it?
If you look at the top box, it lists the agency name, so that would be the agency, and then the arresting officer and investigating officer, which are both the same in this case.
All right, as she goes over what the arrest report looks like, let's take a time for a real quick break and we'll be right back with more of this fascinating case. All right, prosecutor, while we were on break, was bringing out from Agent Deanna Chase all the information that was contained in the reports by the police officer, most importantly, that they were sworn and subscribed by him as being accurate and truthful. Let's go back live to court.
August of 2018.
Okay. Was it August 1st?
I believe so. That was when a complaint was received.
Okay. And your job as part of your investigation, as you told the state, or in answering his questions, you went and gathered up all these different case files, correct?
Correct.
And that includes the reports like the one we're seeing there, the videos, which we'll see some later, all those types of things, correct?
Correct.
And the videos, where did you get the videos from?
The videos they were a combination. I got either from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office themselves or from the State Attorney's Office.
Okay. Which ones did you get from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and which ones did you get from the State Attorney's Office as it relates to the 12 case files that you have here?
Okay. Let me try and remember.
Do you have something that would help refresh your memory? Would you need to take a look at the box?
That might help.
We could let the witness step down, Judge, so she can
Let's
take a
do
look.
this. Let's just bring the box over here to her right, if you don't mind. Her left, I'm sorry. Put them on the floor, and she can take a second, peruse those in the court's presence.
Not that heavy.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Take your time, Ms. Chase.
While she's perusing, let me go back to Sarah. I didn't get you to give an answer to that last question, but let's move on a little bit. What is the value? Explain what the prosecutor is doing right now by talking about all the reports that she reviewed and going through in detail what each of those boxes that were filled out were, Sarah.
So she's really laying the groundwork for the jury to see that this is a sworn report that the officer has made, right? It's an official report. He is it's highlighting the dishonesty that's involved in this. And I think it can be a powerful tool, even though it seems a little boring at the moment, because the jury is going to look at those things and see this is a true dereliction of duty, right? This is an official report. This is life-changing for the people involved. And he signed his name to something he knew to be truly and fully false.
Adam, I want to go to you, give you an opportunity because we didn't get earlier. I opine here that most cops that get themselves into trouble go out, They do something, it's momentary. They may have violated rules and procedures, but they weren't going out there with the intent and when they woke up that day to actually commit some sort of crime. Now, there are cops that will, there have been times where they plant evidence because they think they're doing the right thing and this person's a target and they want to establish probable cause in an affidavit. No good, no matter how you add it up. But what do you make of this guy? These people aren't under investigation. These are just random motorists, these poor people. What do you think about that?
Yeah, without too much hyperbole, I think this is one of the most important cases that we've ever covered. I think this is as important as the Derek Chauvin trial. I mean, Derek Chauvin murdered someone, and that is the most extreme version of police misconduct. And so it gets the attention, and it should, it rightfully should. But this stuff happens all the time, not to this level, not this many cases. But this is so important for the nation to understand. It's not just us defense attorneys and civil rights attorneys running around saying, hey, there's some bad cops out there. Planting drugs is more than just a Dave Chappelle skit. It really happens. To put a light on this and to say, this is the power. This is what I try to explain to people all the time, that a bad officer, even if it's like, there's one bad apple in the bunch, they have so much power and they have so much ability to destroy lives that it's not just a bad apple. I mean, it's the damage that this guy has done is tremendous. So I think it's really, really important to talk about it and to show it. And I'm glad we are.
I agree completely with everything you said. Let's go back live to court.
The cases that don't have the videos, Turner, Bowling, Benefield, and Williams, did those all take place in 2017? Were those arrests by Mr. Wester in 2017?
Yes.
Okay. As also part of your investigation, you did not search Mr. Wester's patrol vehicle, did you?
I did not.
Okay. Did you ever try to get a search warrant for his vehicle?
I did not apply for a search warrant.
Okay. Did anybody from FDLE apply for a search warrant for his vehicle?
No.
Okay. Were you ever asked by the sheriff's department to come search his vehicle?
No.
Stop. Sidebar.
No better time than the good old sidebar to take a break. We'll be right back. All right, we're covering the trial of Zachary Wester, a very important trial, like Adam had just been speaking about. They just went to lunch break. There wasn't anything that was of any significance with regard to the remaining questions of that agent. Adam, I just got to go back to you one more time. You were speaking about the importance of this case and what it means, and I could not agree with you anymore. What I found interesting about this case is in all the police misconduct cases where I've handled that dealt with planting drugs or doing something of that nature, the cops were thinking that, as I said earlier, that they were doing the right thing. What do you think goes into the mind of a person like this that's just pulling random people over? And what kind of mentality? Is this a problem with the hiring process? We knew he got fired from another department where they would just actually take these poor innocent people, plant drugs, have them arrested that had lifelong consequences. One of those people had their children taken away from them. What goes into the psyche of a person like this?
I don't know. I don't know, Bob, because it's to do this to a person, to do this to a human being, you have to be sick on some level. This is not a public safety issue. You're not protecting the public from anything. The way I see it the most often is traffic stops are often used as pretexts to search a car. You say that someone went over the line, you say that someone sped a little bit, was speeding a little bit, and then, oh, maybe their tint on their window is too dark, maybe there was a slight smell of marijuana, whatever they want to say. And then they search the car, whatever they find, then ultimately they say, well, it was just sitting out on the center console. So in those scenarios, which I see pretty often, I believe that those cops in their head think they're doing the right thing because they're still trying to arrest someone who has some sort of illegal narcotic on them, or if there was a weapon recovered, something like that. But this guy, the guy we're talking about right now, I can't even begin. I can't even begin to guess what he's thinking, because he's just going out and destroying lives with really no other intent but I don't know, step out of his daddy's shadow, since his dad was a cop, and that's who hired him, that office, after he was fired. But it's really just so mind-bogglingly disturbing, and the amount of damage done to the citizens under his watch is just it's incomprehensible.
Yeah, Sarah, the officer, former officer, not defendant, actually resigned during his first job because he was under pressure for allegations of having inappropriate sexual activity while on duty with married women.
Mhm.
And I believe I had read somewhere where the sheriff that did not want him on the department anymore contacted another sheriff, the other sheriff, which is the cause of this particular case, and said, not a guy to hire. He was hired literally the next day. And as Adam notes, his father worked as a chief narcotics detective within that department. So with all of these arrests that are going on, we talk about this in criminal justice reform. Why are people in one department resigning because they're being put under investigation and then just transplanting themselves into another department? This is like where there's a problem. Maybe the person is not temperamentally fit to be a police officer.
No, absolutely. I think we're seeing some nepotism here, certainly. He had a family connection to this department. And you just see through the allegations in his prior employment as well. We talk about what kind of person is this? I think it's clear that this is a person who has an extreme level of disregard for anything other than their own interest. A disregard for proper respect of authority, rules that apply to themselves, and the fact that he was able to get hired so quickly under the circumstances that he was, it leads us to really doubt the integrity of that system, and I think again leads the public to have a lot of questions about whether or not they can trust the officers who are out there on the street every day.
Yeah, and so our audience knows there is one tape, at least that I viewed, that is pretty irrefutable and very bad. Yet the defense was giving an opening statement indicating that he will testify at the time of trial. But right now, I want to go to the prosecutor's opening statement. That's Thomas Williams. The defense opening statement, I apologize, maybe where he made that claim. Let's take a listen.
We do want you to hear from all the major players in this case. So that's why I can tell you right now, you will hear from Zachary Wester. He will talk to you about every single one of those stops and what he did. That's why we need you to wait until you hear all of the evidence before you start discussing it, before you start deciding. That's why the judge tells you, even on these breaks, you can't start talking before you hear it all. And I know that's hard, but our system of justice depends on you following those rules. But I submit to you that when you hear all of the testimony and you see all the evidence, you're going to find that the state has failed to meet their burden, and the state's going to give you no choice but to find Zachary Wester not guilty. Thank you.
So, Adam, as we know, the defense doesn't have to give any opening statement. They can remain silent throughout the entire trial. Most defense lawyers do give an opening statement. What did you think about that short clip that you heard about how they're going to go about the case?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously up against the wall. I oftentimes don't give opening statements because I find that you end up just saying, hey, keep an open mind. I'll see you at closings. Just don't make up your mind yet. So I try to do a lot of my opening statement in voir diring and questioning the jury. But this is a situation where I feel like he's got to testify in order to explain away that video that you mentioned and some of the others. So in that case, just get out there and tell them, just say, hey, wait, you're going to hear stuff, but wait until he gets up on the stand. Then it'll be clear. So we all wait with bated breath.
Sarah, I always say on the Law & Crime Network, we cover these cases gavel to gavel, but one of the great dynamics that goes on with regard to a trial is what was going on with regard to the plea offer process and whether there's a cost-benefit analysis of going to trial given what the plea offer is versus what they face with the trial tax, if you will. There's a lot of time that's associated with this case. I'll tell you, as a person who used to make those decisions, if this case came across my desk, my plea offer would be this: no offer. we're going to trial, and we're going to take you down for as much time as we can. And I did that very rarely. That's how much this case bothers me in terms of what he did to innocent people, but moreover, how he tarnished the badge.
Sure. And I think you're absolutely right in that the state has an interest in trying to reestablish that trust that we've been talking about being lost in the institution. And I think probably they really had no choice but to push for the maximum that they could in this case to show the public and to make a strong statement that this is not the norm, this cannot be the norm, and it will not be accepted.
Adam, any thoughts as to what you think is going to be the rest of the prosecution's case vis-a-vis the idea that they got to kind of go through what some people may consider dry testimony? I don't personally. I think it's important to see how this process works, what the monitoring is, what the policies are. Are they building up to that crescendo to show he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing with the body-worn cameras on many instances? What do you think?
Yeah. I think of course that's what they're doing, and that the testimony that we just heard from the woman going through the complaints that were sworn affidavits. I mean, that's powerful stuff. When you can get up there in front of a jury and said, "You see this signature? This was a lie that destroyed someone's life. You see this signature? This was a lie that destroyed someone's life." They're laying the groundwork to be able to do that. And if I can just go back to what Sarah just said for 1 second, I think she's right that that this is to help ensure confidence in the public. But more than that, it's twofold, because it's also a real opportunity to show a deterrent to the police officers that may fall down this path. It's so easy to take advantage of the position of power that they're in. And so this is a situation where I think you two are both right. One, I wouldn't make any offer if I was a prosecutor on this. And two, it is absolutely going to ensure confidence in the public. But more than that, it better send a message to every officer out there that is even, flirting with dancing on that line, that if you do, you will be caught, and there's more and more ways to be caught every day, and the repercussions will be harsh.
Yeah, Sarah, having been a civil rights litigator before I became the county prosecutor, I was fortunate enough and honored enough to be in charge of 44 police agencies. To Adam's point about the deterrence factor, we made a lot of internal affairs reforms. They're talking about social justice right now. I have found that if you position it culturally to the department, that this is to keep you from getting into trouble. This is that if you're having a problem, you can be retrained. That my main goal, I said this a million times, was that you always be called police officer and never defendant. And what I see here is a guy who was in another department, was warned that he was problematic and doing things on the job that he shouldn't have been doing, hired anyway, with multiple complaints like this, where nobody was really doing a global assessment. Why do we not have computer programming, which we instituted, that had actually red flagging? Hey, there's too many of these particular incidents with this officer statistically. Go back and do a global review of it, and maybe you can save an officer's career, or maybe you can make sure that people aren't victimized down the road. So I guess my long-winded point here, I look at these guys, not just him, but I look at the entire department and the culture of the department as part of the responsibility here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of ties into a little bit of what we were seeing in that, otherwise maybe considered dry testimony, is the prosecution's got to fight that battle in this case, right? They've got to put up some evidence as well about the checks and balances that were in place in their system, and keeping in mind that the majority of the state's case is often based on the testimony of officers, right? So in this case, they're attacking an officer for his credibility issues and putting him on trial as they should. But tomorrow, they're going to have to be back in the courtroom relying on the testimony of an officer. So those checks and balances aren't just important, I wouldn't think, to the officer, which is a great point. We want to really encourage holistic, well-rounded officers, but to the system. We have to have a system, both for the public, for the state, in which you have faith that the processes are going to catch incidents like this, and that there are supports in place. And, the state's going to have to answer that at some point in this case. They're going to have to confront that evidence that there were markers.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I got to tell you what, it also is important that if you've ever found to be lying, that is something that has to be produced to every defense attorney from that point forward so that they have that information to cross-examine the witnesses. I'm your host, Bob Bianchi. For the next hour, we're going to be talking about this case, Zach Wester, a former police officer accused of fabricating and planting evidence on numerous people. It really is, if the facts of this case are proven, an outrageous thing, and I think our guests I know they do not disagree with it. One of them was with respect to Teresa Odom and a traffic stop. This is a big one as far as the videos are concerned. I looked at this one. Take a quick look at it, especially around 4 to 5 minutes into this, or we may get to that exact clip, and watch what went on with regard to what this police officer did as he was searching Ms. Odom's car, who, by the way, gave consent to that search.
All right, Deputy Haycare, make sure you don't get run over, okay? Because I have faith that he would prefer to get over. All right, just hang tight, myself. Do what now?
I said, if you find any money, I come up missing $5 at the hospital.
All right, I'll see if I can find it for you.
Adam, thoughts?
I mean, that should make everyone who's watching this sick to their stomach. That's really disturbing in a way that that shakes you to your core. You know, I don't know this officer. I don't know his dad, who was a former officer. But I got to tell you, if I'm that office, if I'm that department, I'm going to go back and review his father's cases, honestly, because where did this guy learn this? Who taught him how to do this? Who, at some point along the way, there has to have been times where he was checked, and this has been allowed to continue on some level. And I would go all the way back. I mean, this is just, it's sickening. It's sickening to watch. And no, I mean, you see that woman on the side of the road. I mean, she's joking about $5 because she's got nothing to worry about as far as she's concerned. It's awful.
Yeah, Sarah, to another point that Adam's making, if you look at that entire clip, and this will all be played to the jury, there was he was very gregarious, the officer. Mm-hmm. He was joking with her. He got her out of the car. He modified consent. She was very clear. You can do all the searching you want. While she was in that section where the other officer was, a couple of times he came back and he was joking. Very gregarious. I look at it as predatory. It was a predatory kind of person, lulling the person into a sense of security, knowing all along that I'm going to go plant, if those in fact are drugs, that's the allegation right now. He then takes it to the back of the patrol car a little bit later on in the clip. He gets out the little drug testing kit with the other officer. Oops, look, it's methamphetamine. And you see just her look. It's not mine. I did not have that in there. And she actually makes a phone call at one point, because who knows if somebody else, has that car. But I mean, really, how odious is this particular situation? And as a prosecutor, what would be your point of view as to how you would go about prosecuting a guy like this? Throw the book, Offer a plea?
Yeah.
Cut the baby?
No.
What?
No, I think that it really goes back to the stance that we've all agreed on, that you've got to throw the book at this guy, right? Not just what he did, but the manner in which he did it. It really exasperates it to me because he's lulling her into a place of trust. He's behaving in this nonchalant manner. And then I'll tell you, watching that video, what really got to me is you watch him as he's pulling drugs to plant out of his glove, and he kind of has a little alrighty laugh about it. Just kind of the level of everydayness to what he was doing as he was ruining an average citizen's life is appalling.
Yeah, I'm going to be very, very interested to see if the Department of Justice is going to take this case up in terms of the civil rights violations. I know we'll have to wait to the end of the trial, but to me, it doesn't get any worse than this. Anyway, the prosecution gave an opening statement today talking about the traffic stop video. So let's take a quick listen to what the prosecutor said.
Now, in February of 2018, a lady named Teresa Odom was driving home from seeing a family member at the hospital. She was pulled over by the defendant, Mr. Wester. Now, her truck at that time was pretty old and pretty beat up. You're going to get to see it on the video. And no one's ever going to contest that. Mrs. Odom will tell you that. And her brake lights were not working properly. So Deputy Wester pulled her over. And his camera turns on. He turns it on at the very beginning of that stop and makes contact with her. And you'll see that. Apparently there had been some weather the day before, a couple days before, and perhaps that had an effect on it. But either way, there were some issues with her brake lights. The defendant lets her know the reason for the stop. She says, yeah, I understand. And after that, the defendant asks her if he can search her car. She's going to tell you that she agreed. She didn't have anything to hide, so she said yes and got out of the car voluntarily. When she gets out of her car, there was already a second backup deputy behind her. So she got out, she walked back where that backup deputy was, and you'll see it, it's about a full car length's space, and she stayed back there with the only other deputy at that time who was on scene. And one thing that you'll notice when you watch Mrs. Odom's video at that point is so common to what these other victims will tell you in this case, and what the other videos will show you, is that while the defendant was searching her car, in other words, once she's out, he has complete access and complete control of that car. Only him. These backup deputies are out of view. They're literally back up. They're standby. And, of course, the occupants of the car are not still in there. They're removed. It's just him. And all we have is what his body camera video shows and what he would later put in his arrest reports when he arrested these people.
Adam, the prosecutor's hammering home detail by detail about what happened with Ms. Odom and connecting it to other cases as well. You're a defense attorney. How are you defending this case?
How am I defending this case? I'm going to say that, well, what do you really see in the video? Are you 100% sure? Can you be 100% sure that he took that meth out of his trunk and placed it in there? Or, you know, look at a man's years of service and all the good that he's done in the community. I'm sure they're going to put him on the stand and talk about whatever accommodations he may have received and whatever good he's done. You know, you open the door with character witnesses. If you put on some good ones, you open yourself up to some bad ones. But he's got to go there to some degree. And so you say, don't let your eyes fool you. You know, don't let your eyes fool you. What does the evidence show? Does the evidence show beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt, that he planted those drugs and that they weren't taken from her purse or a bag that was just off camera, that was just outside the body camera footage? You know, common sense is going to be their biggest enemy, but I think that's how you would try to defend it.
Yeah, yes. And Sarah, what do you think about the possibility that him having been fired in the previous department for inappropriate sexual conduct, was the allegation with married women while he's on the job, may possibly come out if he takes the stand or puts on any kind of character witness?
Yeah, you know, that's always a benefit risk analysis that you're going to do as a defense attorney. In this case, I think that probably he just needs to tackle it head on. right? You want to put that evidence out there on your terms first. So if he does take the stand, I would expect to see that come out maybe right at the very start. You know, did this happen? Why did it happen? Just kind of take a little bit of wind out of the state's sails as they try to use it in cross-examination to detract from his credibility.
Adam, do you see a Department of Justice investigation for civil rights violations here?
Oh yeah, sure. And I see an absolute monster lawsuit coming down this department's path. I mean, they're going to have hundreds, at least 100 potential clients with real damages. I mean, if I was the state, I'd be worried about this. If I was the nation, I'd be worried about this. Just in terms of the amount of damages and monetary value that this case has. But beyond that, beyond a civil suit, yeah, the Department of Justice, I think they're going to look into this and see if this is a systemic problem in the department. Again, with this many examples, over 100 examples that we know about, and if we know about 100, there's probably 150 more that we don't know about. How do you not look into that? Because how could you possibly think that that's all from one person with no help?
Yeah, excellent point. Okay, guys, great commentary. Really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. They're still on lunch. Of course, when they come back, we're going to be in court covering gavel to gavel. Stay with us. All right, we're covering the Zach Wester case, a former police officer on trial on 67 counts that are ranging from everywhere from official misconduct, racketeering, fabricating evidence, unlawfully arresting people, perjury, as well as a slew of drug offenses. Carries a potential of up to 200 years in prison, although our people down there tell us the more likely sentence is a 20-year sentence on the top, maybe with about 13 or 13 and a half years without parole. The jury's on lunch, should be coming back shortly. We've been listening to the prosecutor's opening statement describing the videos and how they're going to put their case together. Let's listen to a little bit more of the prosecutor's opening from this morning.
Now, the defendant began the search of Ms. Odom's car at the driver's side door. And as he's getting ready to search, he's putting his search gloves on, these tactical black style search gloves, similar to ones that you guys have probably seen, but you will see them in the video, and they are evidence in this case. Now, as he's putting these gloves on, you can see on the video that he has his left hand clasped shut like this as he's putting them on. And you will see right here in this corner, you'll see a small white object in his hand, right by where his hands are clasped as he's putting the gloves on. You'll see his hand drop down out of view towards the floorboard of Miss Odom's car. Now, you can't see where his hand is. As I said, it drops out of view at that point. And as I said earlier, the body cameras, the idea is that we can see as best we can what a deputy sees. And it's going to be up to you, the trier of fact in this case, to decide when things are out of view if that's intentional or if that's just the way it works, if it's accidental. But the video from Mrs. Odom's search will show basically her seat cushion. You'll see a purse in front of it, and then you'll see a seat cushion, a real close-up view of it. You'll see the defendant's left hand partially come back into view and reach over into her purse, which was in that seat. And her purse had the things in it that purses have, you know, her personal effects, her hair brushes, things like that. What you will see him take out of that purse, you can't see where he takes it out because that's partially out of view. But what you'll see him then take out and bring into view of the body camera is a small white baggie of methamphetamine. He takes that baggie and bends down and takes a metal spoon off of the floorboard of Mrs. Odom's car, and he sets the baggie of methamphetamine in the spoon. You'll hear that one of the ways that methamphetamine can be used is that it can be placed in a spoon. In other words, poured out of the baggie, placed in a spoon, and then some kind of a heat source, like a lighter, is underneath it. and then it is melted and placed into a syringe to be injected into somebody's arm or body. Well, Miss Odom is going to tell you that that was an old spoon, and you hear her say it on the video. Says that was an old spoon that she had been eating yogurt with and had left on the floor of her car. Now, that's not going to be the cleanest or the most organized thing, but that's just what Mrs. Odom is going to tell you. And you're going to get to see her car and see for yourself that it's, by some people's standards, not the most clean car. Let's just say it. That's what she's going to tell you, and that's what it's going to show. But you're also going to get to see, members of the jury, that spoon. It is an item of evidence. You're going to get to see it. And on the bottom of that spoon, there will not be any burn marks, any char marks, any discoloration. When the defendant took that baggie of meth in that spoon, he walked it around from her car and walked it in front of her. And she immediately and adamantly denied it. She says, "No, sir. That is a yogurt spoon, sir. And I don't know what that is." She's adamant in her denial. She even asked Mr. Wester if they can test that spoon for yogurt. She asked him if she can test that baggie for prints. Now, that's not what they do roadside. That's not what a patrol deputy does roadside, but she's asking that, and you'll see it. Despite her pleading, despite her denying that it was hers, the defendant he does arrest Mrs. Odom, and he takes her to jail. The defendant makes a choice when writing a report for this and does not include that she requested that the item be tested for prints or that she even asked that it be tested for yogurt. Now, on the way to jail, the defendant drives her there, and you're going to get to hear from that video the defendant say something right from his own mouth on that video. He says, "I tell people this a lot," says this to Miss Odom. "You got to be careful who you have around. And unfortunately, a lot of people you think you can trust, you can't." And just like that, Miss Odom and the other victims that you'll hear from in this case will tell you that they were powerless and they were taken to jail for crimes they didn't commit, for allegedly having methamphetamine in their car that they say wasn't there until after the defendant was in their car and searched their car.
Adam, I was a little confused at that part of the opening statement when the prosecutor is talking about how the packet came out and they brought it back to the spoon. Was that what you saw, the way that he's describing going into the purse first and then coming back out with it?
Yeah, I mean, he had it tucked in the thumb area of his glove, and so before he put on his gloves, he took his gloves out, and that was just tucked in there, and you could see it for a brief moment, a little white square. I didn't even know that that's what I was looking at until all of a sudden then the spoon came out and then the baggie came out. But yeah, I mean, it's all there. But as I said before, if you asked me to defend it, I'd say, well, is the actual act on camera? We don't know. Oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second. When you hear the prosecutor though talking about this, what I think he should be saying too is, and I hope they have, is that what about her blood work? What about track marks? If this is a person who you're accusing now of, and all these people of being meth addicts or using illegal substances, well, I hope that they were smart enough to do blood work and to take pictures of them, because there's not going to be any track marks and there's not going to be any meth found in her system. And so I hope that's part of this case as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you're making, because also we have, Sarah, the idea that she's trying to get them to do forensic things like test the spoon for yogurt and, fingerprints and things of that nature. So that's a little bit unusual for somebody who has had something found in their vehicle. I think that's a pretty persuasive thing about how she responded to this.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to go over well with the jury, because she responded like a normal person who didn't have drugs in her car, right? Those aren't mine. She doesn't know much about the system. It shows someone truly incredulous that this is happening to them in the moment, and really making some practical sense statements about what she'd like to do to prove her innocence, really.
Yeah, wow, this is really going to be an unbelievable case. It has unbelievable implications as well. Well, we're talking about the defense. What's it going to be? Let's listen to a little bit of the defense opening statement.
And as the prosecutor said, this case is essentially 12 drug possession cases. 12. But as the testimony is going on during this case, over this week and probably in the next week, there's some other numbers that I want you to remember. One of those numbers is 7. That's how many of those 12 entered into some type of agreement to resolve their case without challenging it in court. The other 5 were dropped before they could ever make it into a courtroom. 33. That's the number of felony convictions and crimes of dishonesty you're going to hear about from these 12 individuals, spread out amongst them. Now, not all of them will have a felony conviction, but we expect the evidence to show that there's going to be at least 33 prior felony convictions and crimes of dishonesty. 11. That's the number of backup officers that were on these scenes. That were right there. You'll see in these videos, from me to Mr. Wester right now, I could be a backup officer watching him search these cars in broad daylight. You'll see it on video. The number 11 again. So many civil lawsuits have been filed where 11 of these 12 are seeking money. Would that motivate their testimony? And finally, 0. Before Mr. Wester was suspended, that's the number of complaints against him about these cases. 0.
Adam, what do you think about the calculations here? The 33 felony convictions of defendants, 11 backup officers. Well, we know from the Odom case, the backup officers weren't anywhere near where the conduct was occurring. And so what do you think about that presentation by the defense? Compelling to the jurors in your mind?
Well, I think he finished the right way, right? With 0. I think that was a powerful way to finish. 0 complaints by these individuals. I did not like the start because you're saying that 5 or 7 of those people had pled out and that there were 33 felony convictions amongst them. For me, that's just low-hanging fruit for the prosecutor to say, yeah, that's right. He ran the plates, and as soon as he saw that these people had any sort of criminal history, he clicked into action and thought, well, let's see what we can get out of this person when I go plant some meth in their truck. So I think that is highlighting the sensitivity of the individuals that he really chose to exploit with his evil scheme.
Yeah, Sarah, what do you think about that? Because that is definitely a theory that's gone around for a while, is that they take the people who are the most vulnerable in terms of credibility issues. It's not the doctor or the lawyer or, a judge that this is going to happen with, because those people's credibility have never been convicted of crimes. That makes these people it makes it even more sick, if you ask me.
Sure. And I think that's the way that the state will and has to spin it. I disagree a little bit on the plea side of it. I agree that it's egregious to use that because we all know that people admit to things in our justice system for different reasons that they didn't necessarily do. But I do think that one has the possibility of really resonating with the jury, because I know throughout the 20 years of my practice, we encounter that a lot, right? Jurors just have a hard time understanding, whether it be when we're addressing a false confession or otherwise, they really have a hard time wrapping their head around the fact that somebody may admit to something that they didn't actually do. So I do think that the defense has a little bit of a door on that one to hang their hat on.
That presents such an interesting question as to whether or not there'll be any testimony from an expert or otherwise about that, because you're not supposed to be pleading guilty until you can give a truthful, factual basis for it. But we all know in the real world, facing a probationary sentence, say, versus going to trial and being convicted and doing 20 years can be a great incentive for somebody to lie. All right, guys, great commentary. As always, we're going to take a quick break here on the Law and Crime Network. Jury should be back any minute. Stay with us, please. All right, the second witness called by the prosecution was James Crisp. as a former field training officer and actually trained the defendant in this case. Let's take a listen to the direct examination by the prosecutor.
Did this training also include, Mr. Chris, the importance of being thorough and investigating probable cause when arresting someone? Yes, sir. Mrs. Bittner, could I get you to go to page 21 of 1B as in boy? All right, in the middle of this page, there's a paragraph that begins the authority to deprive. Are you able to see that, Mr. Chris? Yes, sir. Could you read that into the record, please? The authority to deprive someone of their freedom and permanently alter their future when you arrest them is one that should be taken very seriously. Some officers do not comprehend the weight of this responsibility and the consequence of their actions. Right, and the next paragraph? Never arrest someone because you are unable to determine who is at fault. Do not have the mindset that you will arrest them and let the court system figure it out. This is a lazy and irresponsible approach to the job. Did the defendant demonstrate that he understood this information? Yes, sir. He was given this information. Mr. Chris, did the defendant ultimately successfully complete this training? Yes, sir.
Adam, what is the purpose of the prosecutor putting a second witness on to talk about field training and specifically field training with respect to the defendant?
Well, I think it's to say that what he did was wrong and that they weren't trained to plan drugs. I mean, it's just another brick in the foundation that they're building. And I think the prosecutor is doing this in part to protect themselves, not the prosecutor's office, but in some portion, the prosecutor's office and the police department, that, hey, we have training. We train people the right way. We tell them how to do things. And what he's doing, now compare it to what you just saw, and it's so far outside the scope of training. It's so far outside the scope of what you're told to do, how you're told to handle these situations, that it makes his conduct even more egregious. So hopefully it puts a little shine on the police department and even the prosecutor's office for prosecuting these cases and takes even more away from his actions.
Yes, I mean, to a certain extent, is the prosecution required in order to prove its case that these policies and procedures exist in order to maintain a safe constitutional environment so that people are only arrested if there's probable cause? I mean, it sounds so obvious to us as lawyers, but maybe it's something that still is an essential element for them to prove in their prosecution. What do you think?
I'm not certain that it is like statutorily an essential element, but I think that practically you're right, that they are going to need to show we have the right procedures in place and this individual made an intentional decision not to. And maybe that's where it plays in a little bit and does become an essential element, is that they can lay out circumstantial evidence of his intent to commit these crimes that he did by saying, look, he did these other things wrong in an attempt to try to cover up what he was doing. You know, as we go through the course of the case and the evidence comes out, I suspect we'll see that he didn't follow certain procedures and policies in the course of his traffic stops and interactions. And that can show his intent, right? An intent to cover up what he knew was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to the Derek Chauvin case. Policies and procedures are important when you're evaluating what police work is. But obviously, if there's a direct examination of Mr. Chris as the field training officer, there's going to be cross-examination. So let's take a listen to a little bit of that.
You would have gone over this with Mr. Wester as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if we could scroll down to section B, top of page 10 there, and then security. Could you read that paragraph for us?
It's B, security vehicles requiring processing to such an extent that an on-scene examination is not practical. The vehicle will be towed and placed in the evidence section, secured garage area, where the exposure to the elements is minimal.
I can stop you right there for just a second. Where is the secured area of the evidence section?
At this time, it was a garage next to the evidence section at the sheriff's office that could be locked up. It had a cage around it and a roll-up door, but it could be secured from the rest of the sheriff's office.
Right. You could continue reading that.
Let me see where I was. Okay. Evidence personnel will be notified when a vehicle needs to
to be placed in the secured area of the evidence so that they may open the doors. What that's saying is that roll-up door is going to be locked, so you needed to call somebody that had access to it to open the door.
Yeah.
The vehicle will have evidence tape placed on the doors and trunk. A vehicle impound envelope will be filled out and the keys placed in the envelope. The envelope will be given to evidence personnel or placed in the evidence locker. If needed, the FDLE crime lab will be notified to set up a time for them to process the vehicles or other motorized vehicles.
Okay. And so this policy came out in November of 2011?
I believe that's correct.
And this is a policy that was in effect when Mr. Wester became a deputy sheriff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this policy would have been known throughout the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that your understanding is how, if you were going to secure a vehicle at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, that's the way it's supposed to be done, correct?
If I'm securing a vehicle that needs processing,
right,
that's the way it's going to be done. If I'm just towing a vehicle that was blocking traffic on the side of the road, it goes into a different section. This is for a vehicle that may contain evidence that needs processing either by our investigators or FDLE crime lab.
Right. And the purpose of that is to make sure that nobody can access the vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if a vehicle is sitting for 4 or 5 weeks, you want to make sure that it is secured and nobody is entering that vehicle, correct?
Well, I believe there's a policy on this, and the evidence collection and processing of that vehicle needs to take place within 3 days is what the...
Okay, so not only does it need to be taped up and secure, but it's also the policy of the Jackson County Sheriff's Office that vehicle needs to be searched within 3 days?
I believe that's correct. I would have to look that up.
Okay.
So, Adam, where do you think the defense is going with cross-examination on this? What point is trying to be made? Is it just merely a policy violation, or this had a substantive impact on the investigation?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is lay out that he was following protocol as closely as they can make it. They're going to do everything they can to build up the good points of his time as a police officer. I think that this is it's tough because a point like this it's hard to really connect it to the jury. You're not really, it's not some big overarching thing like a video showing what pretty clearly looks like planting meth in a spoon in a truck. You're trying to just get a little detail, just trying to get a crack in that armor. And I think what they're trying to do ultimately is convince one juror. I don't think that they're realistically going into this thinking they're going to get a full acquittal. They're trying to convince one person on that jury that maybe one person that they can make eye contact with and really connect with and say, yes, see, he did almost everything right.
Yes, Sarah, I always talk about that principle, trying the case to a juror of one in a case like this, somebody who just does not want to convict a cop. And I think that works in some cases where the jurors have a sense that they were trying to eradicate criminality at a greater level, even though they may have breached those standards. Those are the cases I've seen. This one, as we've noted, is completely different because these people are completely innocent. So that juror one certainly is something that you want to do. But what did you think about this kind of cross-examination? Was it just trying to nick a little bit here and a little bit there? Because you know as well as I do, Sarah, and you do too, Adam, we always say as lawyers, you dance with the one you brought. And sometimes there's not just a lot of good things that you can do when you have especially a defense case like this.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where you're getting a little bit of a look over here, not over there, right? He's got to give himself enough to talk about in his closing argument to really kind of try to detract and get the jurors to divert their attention from some of the video evidence that we anticipate seeing and some of the stronger testimony that may come out. So I think he's just trying to pull something out there that he maybe can use to his best advantage later.
Yeah, and Sarah, sometimes, like I said, he danced with the one you brought. Sometimes you just don't have the good factual case, but I think it's important. Tell our audience why it's important and why defense lawyers still present a defense anyway, how crucial that is in order to make sure justice is ensured.
Right. And, this is probably the question that we all answer at cocktail parties all the time, right? Why do you do it? How can you do it when you don't have much of a case or there's a lot of evidence against your client? Well, we have to test the system, right? No one wants a system where the state's accusations go untested. So take the evidence you've got and you deal with it the best that you can. And you do that by testing the system and making sure that the state has to put forward appropriate evidence and making sure that they don't get away with anything.
Yeah, Adam, I'm curious about your thoughts about that because we've seen prosecutors get it wrong or prosecutors do bad things and police may do bad things. What are your thoughts about, and what do you tell at the cocktail party when somebody asks, Adam, how can you be a defense lawyer?
Well, I usually tell a story a lot like this defendant. Quite honestly, I say, you don't know what a cop can be doing. If a cop sees Johnny and legally arrests him for using crack, a year later, he might see Johnny again with no suspicion of anything, but he's going to, in all likelihood, go and stop him and search him because if Johnny loved crack a year ago, he probably still loves crack. And so even though he had drugs on him, the stop was illegal, the arrest was illegal, all these parts leading up to it are illegal. And that's what we're protecting. We're protecting the system that everyone deserves to be protected under. And where in this particular instance, it is a police officer who's being accused and is a defendant. It's his actions that we're normally up against. So, listen, I give this defense attorney credit for what I've heard so far. I think he's putting on, he's clearly making arguments. But yeah, you dance with who you brought. These are the facts that you brought to the party. So these are the facts that you gotta take to the jury.
And I could tell you as a prosecutor and a chief law enforcement of over 44 agencies, we don't always get it right. And there is sometimes some bad apples in the bunch. And those defense lawyers, I always felt, were a great check and balance. Loved when I was a prosecutor, when I was trying a case against a great defense lawyer, because then I was confident it wasn't just me making the call. Great commentary, guys. Going to take a quick break here at the Law and Crime Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. An important witness testified in this case for the prosecution as they're putting piece by piece together to authenticate these body cams, and that is a Caleb Corbin who worked for the Sheriff's Department in IT. Let's listen to a little bit of the direct examination of the prosecutor so you can get a flavor as to why the prosecution called this witness.
About a patrol stop where somebody is taken out of a car, a search is conducted, and somebody is potentially arrested.
Yes, it was definitely encouraged for them to wear that and have it on then, for sure.
Okay. Partially or from beginning to end? Or?
From beginning to end.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a policy for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me ask you this. Would you describe to the jury the technical operation of the Axon body camera? So, for instance, how could it even, you mentioned where it was positioned, but how could it be turned on?
So, in order to turn the camera on, as I kind of touched on before, the camera had a switch on the very top of it. You just slid the switch. That would turn the camera on. That wasn't it recording. They kind of stated as a buffer state. It's recording, but it's not saving the video until the officer or the deputy double clicks the center. There's a center round button in the center of the camera. They would double click that. That would jump the video back in time, about a minute in time, and that would grab both audio and video of the recording. Now, there was a lot of, if a deputy didn't turn the camera on with the slide switch, a lot of times they would get out, turn the camera on with the slide switch, and then press the record button in the center. So with that, it got, as soon as that, body camera was turned on.
Was there a function of the camera to notify a deputy if it was actually on?
Sure. The body camera had three abilities to be able to let someone know, the deputy or someone around the deputy. It had an audible beep, it had a vibrate, and it had an LED on the top of it. The LED would blink green when it was on and red when it was recording. The deputy did have the ability to turn that off, and that would go into can't remember the state of
That'd
it.
be
but
called a stealth mode?
Yes, sir, stealth mode. They could turn certain features of the camera off, so they could turn off the LEDs, they could turn off the vibrate, they could turn off the audible beep. And that was it was at officer's discretion, more for officer safety. Don't want a big bright light on the center of their chest, or a beep letting someone know where they're at. But most of the time, the guys kept all that on.
Now, at the end of let's say a patrol deputy shift, what were they supposed to do with that body camera?
So at the end of their shift, if it was the end of a 2-day or 3-day shift, the guys worked a 2-day or a 3-day shift. At the end of their shift, they were to dock the camera at the sheriff's department and download all of the video that was on that camera.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How would a video that was captured end up getting preserved to where it could be used at a later date? So you said it would be docketed, correct?
It would be docked at they're at the sheriff's office. We had 2 docks that were mandated. That was the only place they were to download their video. And then that was stored on evidencelibrary.com's, Axon's cloud server that was stored off premise.
Okay. And were the body cameras assigned to specific deputies? So for instance, if I come in after it's been docked, am I going to get the same one back, or is it just up for grabs?
No, they were assigned to specific deputies, and we had actually labeled the back of the body cameras to say whose camera it was.
Okay.
All right. So body cam video, obviously very important. In this case, IT specialists talking about the policies, procedures, how the actual camera works and how they go about preserving it. Sarah, talk to me about the importance of body cameras. Back in the day when I started, I don't know about you, none of these things were around. No motor vehicle recordings, no body cameras. How have they changed the legal landscape?
In so many ways. I think, first of all, they're just stronger evidence, right? And as a defense attorney, it can help you or it can hurt you. Oftentimes it hurts you because, especially if there's a good officer, right, who's put things in their report the same way that they happen on the camera, then that's just a kind of extra level of enhancement of their testimony, and you don't have much to cross-examine them with. But it's also a check. I think it's a check on law enforcement. It's a reminder that potentially things need to be done properly. It's changed my discovery strategy. I think you referenced this earlier, Bob. You always have to make sure that you're putting in the proper requests to preserve and to make sure that you get all of that video. So it's really just opened up a lot of tools, sometimes for the state, sometimes for the defense, to really lay their case out for the jury.
Yeah, Adam, interested in your thoughts and also the additional comment we were talking about offline. When I was prosecutor, I had body camera video that actually exonerated many police officers from claims of excessive force or police brutality and things of that nature. But we are now seeing recent vintage cases, George Floyd, for example, and now this one, where they're actually not good for the police. They're actually presenting evidence for the state. What have been your thoughts?
Well, I think the word here is transparency. Transparency is good, to be as simple as possible. Transparency is good. It's good for the public and it's good for the police officers. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's like asking the question, where do more car accidents happen, in the rain or in the sun? Well, they happen in the sun because it's sunny much more of the time. There are many, 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 many more good officers out there than bad ones. And those officers should all be thrilled that this body cam is really taking hold as sort of the standard, because it does exonerate their behavior and shows what a noble profession and dangerous profession that they do, and what a service they provide for the public. But when there is a bad one, again, it can cause so much damage that the level of transparency that we're now starting to get with these body cam footage can hopefully lead to some more confidence in the public that when there is a bad officer, they will be caught and they will be punished and you will be kept safe.
Sarah, to that point, before they had the body cams, a lot of officers were afraid. The good officers, the very many great officers that Adam talks about, were afraid to come forward because it was their word versus another person's word. But now they actually have this resource, not to mention the fact it kind of forces them, because they have an affirmative obligation to do the right thing as well. Thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of is that little like the bait and the carrot at the same time, right? You know, if you don't say something and that video comes out, you appear at least to be complicit in the action if you had knowledge of it. And one other thought that came to me about the video cameras and how they've affected our legal process, I see interrogations done differently when they are on video.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Guys, listen, you have been excellent guests, Adam Conta, Sarah Becker. We have Michael Bryant, so you are in very good hands. The producer actually said, the man, the myth, and the legend. I'm Bob Bianchi. I will be back on Thursday. Stay with us here at the Law and Crime Network with the gavel-to-gavel coverage we give you.